All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you have never checked out our program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find the Abilities podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. On the studio line with me today, I have Dorothy Rosby. Welcome to the podcast, Dorothy. I'm always great to see you.
Wonderful to see you again, too, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays and all that other. I'm kind of a Scrooge, though. And I'm not, real bad, but I'm just not, the disruption in the schedule and everything. We're going to talk about that a little bit on today's program. Let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Dorothy is an author, a speaker, and a syndicated humor columnist whose work appears in publications throughout the West and Midwest. You can find out where to find her on her website on the appropriately titled DorothyRosby.com. She's here today to talk to us a little bit about humor writing, and her new book, which is "'Tis the Season to Feel Inadequate. Holidays, special occasions, and other times our celebrations get out of hand." And speaking of getting out of hand, your title, that's the podcast right there.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say, so I just let my titles fill up the whole thing,
Yes, there you go. I've had some people, inexperienced bloggers, they put all their text in the title line, and that kind of reminds me. I'm picking on Dorothy, but Dorothy knows me; she could take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think my next book, Billy, I'm going to name my next book something like bestseller or wow, just because my titles have always been so long. So what do you think? Bestseller.
Sounds good. Bestseller. Hey, it could be very appropriate.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
Well, you have a good track record. According to your website, I kind of checked. I don't have a copy of the book yet, but I will. Her book is a collection of humorous essays about the holidays, special occasions, and other times our celebrations make us feel not so celebratory. Boy, that's a tough word. I'm glad I got through that. It's understanding for those who think Christmas form letters can be honest. And it's empathy for anyone who's ever gotten poison ivy during nude recreation week. Yeah, that's probably not a good thing. Poison ivy.
I'm going to say I haven't, just so you know, I have not. But, there are those people who probably have. So
have you ever gone to like a nude beach or anything like that?
Not yet, but I'll tell you this: if I had, I wouldn't tell you anyway. So.
Oh, okay. I've known a few people who have gone, and the general experience is that you kind of have this idea that this is going to be really great. I'm going to see all these young guys with their abs, and I'm going to see all these women, and it's not quite like that. It's like that. No, it's more like. Any doubt that you had about evolution is dissipated. Okay. The missing links are everywhere.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Well, and here's my thing. I tend to be on the chilly side. My son calls me a reptile. I think that's an affectionate term, but so no, it wouldn't be the best place for me. So.
Yeah, and I'm too paranoid too. I'd be like, "Oh, did you see that pimple on my rear end? Do I need to get that checked?"
Yeah, you just know everyone would be looking at you, but that's really not true. They're looking at everybody else too. So yeah,
absolutely. You always have a good spin on things. You're syndicated and a lot of columns, very popular. How hard, from a business aspect, how hard is it to be funny these days? Because it seems like everybody's got an attitude. Everybody's in their own little ideological bubble. And if your humor doesn't fit my view of the world, it's not funny. That's got to be tough, isn't it?
Yeah. I think you're right. But I have always tended to go more towards the self-deprecating kind of humor.
Yeah.
Or the, observational humor, but I generally do a more compassionate spin on it, I guess. I don't normally pick anyone out. And I think, I can't speak for my readers necessarily, but I think that's kind of refreshing in a world that's so divided. I very seldom pick on anyone. Now, there have been a few exceptions. I wrote about oligarchs.
Oh.
why it wouldn't be so great to be an oligarch after all, because you'd have to have all that staff to handle your cruise ship and all this. But also I've written about like some CEOs of big pharma and
Oh
but
yeah,
normally they don't read my column anyway, so I don't hurt anyone's
right.
feelings. At
Yeah,
least I don't think they do. But I think generally speaking, I kind of poke fun at myself, or kind of an us deprecating humor. All of humanity does this stupid thing.
yeah.
So nobody. I don't think that I'm adding to the division in any way. You
Oh sure.
know, and
Yeah.
I think it could be refreshing not to have to read all of that kind of stuff. you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's it's hard to find humor or any type of information these days that doesn't have this spin.
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, absolutely, and that's one thing you do very well. You have a very gentle type of humor, I would say. Like I said, you don't have that edgy, mean spirited type of thing, and a lot of it's self deprecating, which is
Yeah.
fine. But it's also like I said, basic observations that we take for granted. I think that's what you do best. I've known you for a while. From a business aspect, also, I want to stay on that because we do have a lot of writers that listen to the program and follow me on
Sure.
Twitter and all these other places. You mentioned one time, I actually met you a number of years ago through your one of your publishers. And one of the things that you said that always stuck out to me about writer's block is that that's as a professional writer, you don't have that convenience, especially in a case where you write stuff that has a deadline. It's not like a book. I can take 2 or 3 years when I'll work on it in my spare time. But when you have a column, you've got to get that out. And do you want to talk a little bit about how that discipline works?
Yeah, this will sound funny to a lot of writers, but my belief is that a deadline is a gift to a writer, because it is really easy to find other things to do. Writing is hard work and you don't always feel inspired. But a deadline, you have to sit down and put your butt in the chair and do the work. And I just find that I'm very disciplined. I'm up every morning early. I have a little bit of a ritual as far as a reading I do and a meditation I do and feed my cat, but then it's straight to the computer with my, jug of caffeine every morning. And honestly, it's that discipline that really keeps me writing. The more you show up, the more the muse shows up. She's just that way. I think if you don't show up for a while, she gets kind of annoyed
Yeah.
and you just don't get the inspiration. So yeah, it's really important to have discipline. I always say, and I don't mean to be hurtful about this, but a writer's block is a luxury for people who don't have deadlines.
Yeah. So that's the
I
line I
don't,
remember.
yeah. I don't mean that it isn't real. I just mean when you have a deadline, you can't get it. So
Yeah.
you do everything you can not to get it.
I've had authors tell me that to stick to a writing schedule, whether you feel like writing or not, whether it's
Yep.
like 4 to 6 in the afternoon or whatever it is, that really helps because there's a lot of times it's going to flow. There's a lot of times it's not, but you don't get in this habit of just not doing it because you don't have any ideas. That can be a bad habit to fall into, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's really true. And the more you follow the discipline, the more ideas you get. But there are days where you're like, this was a total waste. But I really don't think anything's really a waste. I mean, you sat there for a while, nothing came out, but your mind kind of got working on it. And the next day, things are
Yeah.
cooking. Things are cooking in there. So
Absolutely. I try to do that with what I do here with, the content. And there's a lot of times when just a certain idea that we're working on with the podcast or whatever just isn't flowing, but you gotta fight through it. That's all there is to it. Have you always taken sort of a humorous slant on things? Did you always have that attraction to humor? Has always been part of your, when you were in school or whatever, were you like the class clown, or you were the one who's always trying to remedy, or you got stood up by a boyfriend or whatever, so you made a joke about it? How did that evolve in your creativity?
I think I always did love to write humor. But in my younger days, I wrote a lot of other things too. I tried my hand at fiction, and I tried some really bad poetry, and I had a career writing radio copy and a career writing public relations material. But at some point, and I know exactly when it was, I was really busy. I'm the poster child for the sandwich generation. I was caring for my mother, and I was raising a son, and I really had to cut back. I really had to focus on the kind of writing I liked the best. And that was the one I chose. And, I've never looked back. I really love to write humor. The others can be kind of a chore for me sometimes, but that's the one that gets me out of bed in the morning. So yeah, I really had to focus. And I think focusing is helpful for me. Some people like variety, they can write a little of this and a little of that, but I'm not that way. I have to I'm a one-trick pony, I guess. I don't know.
Sure. Speaking of humor writing, there's a performance aspect of you. Again, I was poking around on your website prior to this interview, and I ran across some of your stand-up. And first of all, you're great. You have a great delivery. Is that something you still do, or what happened with that?
I haven't done a lot of stand-up per se, but I do a fair amount of entertaining speaking, so not stand-up as much as more storytelling or after dinner speeches, that kind of thing, humorous. And I honestly love to do that. I really love it. There's something about an audience that feedback that you get, that instant feedback. It's scary putting your humor out there, because what if nobody laughs? But then you just make a comment about nobody laughing. I mean, it works, and I really get a kick out of it. But honestly, the stand-up I've only done a few times, but the humor speaking, I do fairly often. I speak at conferences or workshops or whatever, and do like an after dinner talk or that sort of thing. I love it.
Yeah, it's obvious from your stand-up that I don't know if you necessarily did a lot of stand-up, but you are a seasoned speaker, because your phrasing, your delivery and everything was so right on. I would encourage you to do that more, because comedy is one of those things. I did it for a while. I did stand-up for a short while, and we had a group of us, and people from all ages, all walks of life. They all looked different. As far as show business goes, stand up is one of the few. You don't have to be attractive. You don't have to be young. You don't have. If anything, not being attractive can be a plus. I mean, like, Rodney Dangerfield, things like that. I haven't known too many comedians that were like Brad Pitt. There just haven't been a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure there have been some, but it is the audience really is in tune to the performance and how you communicate and how you deliver the humor. It is such a great art form from that degree. As somebody who worked as a DJ for a long time, I can't hide behind the board or music or sound drops. You're out there with a microphone in your hand, and that's it. But you also have that writing background, so you can prepare that material. I would think that you'd have to have an advantage, or is there something that's just not your thing?
No, I really love it. I probably would do it more. It's a little, I'm kind of out here where there's not a lot of venues for that. I'm in South Dakota. So that's part of it. But the speaking is, there are venues for me to do that, as far as with conferences or workshops or meetings, holiday parties, and that sort of thing. So I do a fair amount of it. The stand-up I've done, I think what you probably saw, was at the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop.
Okay.
And they have a stand-up night, and I've performed there several times. And there are workshops there for stand-up too. So, I spent a lot of years in radio too, and then writing copy. And so the voice, when you're writing, it's almost like I want my reader to hear my voice. And so though I think that really does help me when I practice a speech. I practice my column as a speech kind of.
Yeah.
It really helps in that effort to have them hear in their head what I sound like. I really aim for that. It's fun too. I mean, it's really fun to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and I knew that you had a radio background too, so that's all fantastic. Of course, I spend a lot of time on that part of our conversation because that's something I get really excited about, and you do that so well. Getting back to Christmas, your book "'Tis the Season to Feel Inadequate," and that's actually the main title. The subtitle is "Holidays, Special Occasions, and Other Times Our Celebrations Get Out of Hand." Tell me a little bit about the premise of the book.
I would say it is about the way we let our high expectations for holidays and events steal the joy right out of them.
Yeah.
And not just Christmas, but well, the special event that comes to mind for me is weddings. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I actually have written about weddings in there too. The way that a wedding or a party that we put on, and I eloped, so what do I know, right? But
Yeah.
it can be huge, and there's 500 guests, and there's all this food and catering and flowers, and then the bride and groom are so nervous they can't even enjoy it. It's like that with Christmas too. We have to have the biggest tree, we have to have all these gifts, we have to have perfect gifts, perfectly wrapped, and our house decorated, and we work ourselves so much that we can miss the joy of the season. So that's kind of the premise of it. Now I kind of, in that way that I tend to do, digress a bit from that premise, but that was the general thought when I
Yep.
began putting that all together, all those essays together. It is all essays about various holidays and special events, and a lot of the focus is on Christmas, but I've got every other one in there too. I mean, I've got all
Sure.
sorts of holidays and special events in there. I just think we sometimes miss the meaning of events and holidays because we're so focused on making them perfect
Oh, yeah.
instead of enjoying the family and the whole idea behind the holidays. So that was my premise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the book being structured, you mentioned it's essays. And one of the nice things about that is with today's busy schedules, sometimes it's hard for a lot of people to sit down, read an entire book. And even over a course of a week or two, their schedule gets interrupted. And then by the time they pick up the book again, they forgot the plot. But in this case here, because of the fact that they're essays, you can kind of pick away at it and get enjoyment from it at any time. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually think that's a better idea. That's what I do whenever I read essays. Is I never read any book of essays all at once. I just read a book by a fellow columnist, John Branning, and I read a little at a time. It just, when you're reading that kind of thing, you absorb them. I enjoy it better when I break it up. The other thing is I kind of work my way through the year, so a reader can do that. They can work their way through the year. I have Christmas, and then I have New Year's, and then I have, Valentine's Day, and all the way right on through the year, ending with Thanksgiving. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it actually is. It is made for reading in small doses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And humor is good to take in that way too, because you can have like different little setups. Like I'm sure you have a number of different situations involving the holidays. Are they based on family or what's some of
Yeah.
the mix?
Well, yeah, there's a wide variety. One of the things I focus on a lot is Christmas letters, how to write them, and how not to hurt anyone's feelings when you write them by not being too perfect. But also, I include some. I wrote several Christmas letters just for kicks. That and those are actual experiences. Though I have to say, I tend to exaggerate, fib.
Oh, of
Flat out
course.
lie sometimes because it is humor, so I can do that. But
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and then there is a lot from my family. For example, I married into a Scandinavian family. I'm from a German background, and my husband is half Swedish and half Norwegian. So I have a whole thing about the traditional foods I had to become acquainted with when I married into a Scandinavian family, and the things that I didn't go for, like lutefisk and lefse, and I don't know if
Yeah.
you're familiar, but so yeah, that sort of thing. And then yeah, I have a few things about my own family, life growing up. My jobs, actually, I wrote about Labor Day and all the things we learn, from the jobs we've had. And so yeah, it is based on my experience for the most part, and then some what would you call it? I don't want to say criticism, but some kind of drawing attention to some of the things that we as human beings do that, like I said, suck the joy right out of our holidays.
Yes, yes. And there's a lot of aspects to that. I mean, you can certainly suck the joy out of the holidays, like you said, just by people do the same thing with vacations. When I go on vacations, I don't want 50 million activities. I just want to relax on the beach, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You don't even
and
schedule. I don't want to schedule.
no, exactly.
I
And
have that.
if people do that with the holidays as well, and they have to have all these little activities for people to come over, and all these games to
Yes.
play, and sometimes all they want to do is hang out. The other aspect of this is that, I mentioned being a Scrooge, and that's kind of the lighter side of it. But there's also, there's a lot of times we have to deal with maybe in-laws that we don't particularly care for, or, your cousin Bob, who's always, getting real loud after he's had a few beers, and the interruption to your schedule. All these things sometimes can really, take the fun out of the holidays. So is there that aspect of the book? Can people relate to certain things going on in the book that maybe just they're looking for something that agrees with them, that I don't particularly like the holidays?
Yes. Well, I think that's true. I mean, I think there's a lot they can agree on. I did not mention any of my in-laws or outlaws that I don't get along with because frankly, I do get along with them very well. I mean, and if I didn't, I wouldn't say so. No, I'm just kidding. I want to
Yeah,
stay in the will, Billy. I want to stay in the will.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
but no, I didn't really get into the difficult. Well, I take it back. There is one mention of a guest that we used to have that used to criticize our lack of decorating. I'm not a big decorator. And
Okay.
so, there is that. But some of the other things that I think people could relate to is, well, I don't know if you know anybody like this, but they complain about holiday weight gain, and then they
Oh,
bake for a week straight.
yeah,
I know people like they're
yeah,
like, I made 18 kinds of candy, and then in the next sentence, I gained 25 pounds over,
yeah,
that kind of thing. There's
yes,
those things we do because we think we have to do them.
yes,
Another one that I really the whole idea of wrapping packages
yeah.
to look so beautiful. Well, I was pleased to find out, Billy, that there has been research that shows that a beautifully wrapped package actually can backfire because it raises the expectations of the receiver. So say, you wrap up a cheese
Oh,
grater. If you wrap up a cheese grater in the most beautiful red wrapping with a big gold bow and give it to somebody, they're going to be really disappointed about the cheese grater, right? Well, they would be anyway, but you get my
yeah,
point. Now, if you
yes,
just put it in a brown paper bag and handed it to them, no expectation. So
yes,
yeah, so I wrote a lot about that, and the title of that essay is "How to Wrap $1 Million Smartphone," because there is $1 million smartphone available, diamond encrusted. So yeah, I mean,
yes,
yeah, that whole idea of beautiful gift wrapping or beautiful decorations. We had bad experiences, with the lights.
yeah,
Where one string quits working, and
yeah,
all of those kind of things. It's just sometimes if you can't laugh at all those things that happen, you're stressful. Your holiday becomes very stressful instead of
yes.
joyful.
Yes. Well, I got to tell you, I kind of feel that holidays are a lot of times are good for the kids, and
Yeah.
this time is probably difficult for empty nesters. A lot of times people's children they move away, they go out of state or whatever, and they can't always come back for all of the various holidays and things like that. But for me, childhood, I had a pretty crazy family, and I got to tell you, when you're 11, 12 years old, and you're down in the basement with a bunch of much older adults, and they're pretty much alcoholics, and they're all sharing ghost stories. That's
Oh
pretty much
dear.
as good as life gets.
Oh my gosh.
That's and I'll never enjoy the holidays as much as that.
They didn't scar you for life with the ghost stories, huh?
No, hearing
Oh,
people that are
that's
half
funny.
sauced sharing ghost stories is pretty. That's as good as life gets right
That
there.
is really funny. Oh my goodness. Now, do you remember all those stories?
Yeah, actually,
Oh,
yeah.
good, good. And you
There's
can
the
pass them on.
yeah, there's the perennial one. I know I turned the light off in the attic. I know I did. Da, 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 da. it's back on again and all this. Oh yeah, I remember those, and I was always thoroughly entertained by them. Um, and I say alcoholics, I say that, in a what sort of I'm looking for, affectionate way. They were good people. They worked hard. They just, when it was time to party, wedding receptions, the New Year's thing, all of that. They savored every drop of enjoyment out of those times that they possibly
That's
could.
funny. Yeah, yeah.
So
That's funny.
yeah. What do you hope? A lot of times when people write a mystery novel or they write a thriller, they hope to have a certain effect on the audience. When you write this, and of course you're basically a humor writer, that's your forte. What do you hope, other than the obvious people laugh, but what do you hope people take away from the book?
Number one, yeah, that people laugh and enjoy it. But I think that humor does this really can do this really great thing, and that is give you a new perspective on things. And I guess that would be it. That then, once they read it, they go, oh, I guess I don't have to have the most beautiful wrapping to give a gift from the heart. I guess I don't have to have the biggest tree in town. Just another perspective. Or I guess I don't have to bake all week.
Yes.
I really don't have to. Nobody says I have to do that. It's not the law. So, yeah, I guess that would be it. A different perspective, maybe just um, looking at the things that we are doing that take the fun out of it and get back to what makes it all fun and great and joyful,
Yeah,
which is
sure.
hardly anything. There's hardly anything necessary to really make it fun, the
Oh
people you
yeah.
love and just the right open heart or whatever. You don't really need all that other
No,
stuff.
no.
Yeah, I guess that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage people to, spend time with people that you love, enjoy their company. It's just like me with those memories of my childhood. Those people are all gone now. They've been gone for a
Yeah.
long time.
Mhm.
And it's take an opportunity to just slow down. You don't have to worry about buying people expensive gifts, having your house decorated, having the gravy absolutely perfect. Just slow down and enjoy time, with your family. That, I think that's a a good reset for me anyway, is kind of what I try to put the holidays into. You have a week or two off, you get away from, some of the stresses of work, and you don't need to create more by putting yourself under the pressure with the holidays, and just reset yourself and go into the new year kind of reset. That's kind of what I try to do with it. Is that how do you
Yes. No, I love that. That's really well put. You know what else you said too that I think is really great about those kind of times and being with people you love and sitting around and shooting the bull, telling all those stories. That is to me, I mean, well, I just had a few guests for Thanksgiving and we just laughed and laughed. There's new things that happen, but we love to talk about, the dumb things that we did long ago or, stories from long ago. So, I mean, that is so important. And if you have children, that's so great to sit around and tell them those stories. Now, my son's all grown up, but, that is so great to have those times where laugh together and it so brings you together.
Absolutely, and don't keep your face in the phone. Enjoy the people around you.
Right.
Um,
Yes, yes. Put
you can
down
take a
the
few
phone.
pictures, yeah, of course, but enjoy the people around you, because I got to tell you, today's a lot of times, especially the younger folks, they come over because they have to, and they just bury themselves on the couch with their phone stuffed in the face, and they're missing out on so much of that arguing and fighting and all. That's what I enjoyed the holidays. that's that's where I
And
got
the
my
stories.
entertainment.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and the term shooting the bull just really describes it when my siblings and I get
Yeah,
together. It
yeah.
just is endless and one topic goes to the next and the next. And I don't have, I know that not everyone gets along with family. And I suppose there's a time where you have to say, maybe I shouldn't spend holidays with people but I fortunately do not have that issue. So it's just a really, to me, there's just the stories and the time together. And because we don't have anywhere to be, you don't have to go to work at that moment. And, you have that day off, you take it and enjoy it and don't worry about decorating. Or I mean,
Yeah.
not that those things aren't great too, but
Oh,
they
sure.
just shouldn't be overwhelming. I don't think you don't want them overwhelming the other fun stuff.
Yes. Yes. Where can people find you now? I mentioned your website, DorothyRosby.com. Are you obviously you're on Twitter? How have things
I'm
been
on.
going for you? Twitter's going through a lot of
Oh
changes.
my
Have you been
gosh.
enjoying? Have you been following that?
No, I am so tired of Twitter. You know what? I seriously talk me out of this, Billy. I'm thinking of not staying on it.
Really?
I
Okay.
am, and here's why.
Okay.
I feel like it's so mean. It's
Yeah.
so mean lately. I um I don't know if it's for me. I feel that way. And not everybody, obviously, but
Sure.
sometimes
Sure.
it's just seen and so um people are so easily share things that they know aren't true, and then they're all pile on and everyone's arguing. It's like nobody checks their facts, and it's like I don't know if I have time for this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with everything that's happening there, it's almost like maybe this is my cue to get off, because I am on Facebook, and I just started Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, and so I'm pretty
Yeah.
busy keeping up. I'm not great at keeping up as it is. So I'm
Sure.
seriously. So what do you think about that? Is that at my own peril to get off
I,
Twitter? I
I
know.
I I would hang in there just a little bit longer. I think some of the
Okay.
predictions of the end of the Twitter time. I think those. Well, who was it? Somebody said it often gets attributed to Twain, although there's some uncertainty whether he actually stated it. But the saying is the
Oh,
predictions of my death have been uh,
greatly exaggerated.
greatly exaggerated.
Yes,
That's what I
yes,
was looking
yes.
for. Yes. And I would say that about Twitter. Twitter right now, I think one of the benefits of Twitter for writers, podcasters, all of the stuff that's in our wheelhouse is in terms of trending topics, it's the most real time platform that's out there.
Mhm,
You don't,
mhm.
I mean, people on LinkedIn, some of them don't even know they're alive at any
Oh,
given moment. And then, Facebook is more detailed. I've always, being in the marketing industry, I've always told people if you have like a lawnmower repair business or something
mhm.
like that, cleaning service, something local, having a Facebook page and doing those localized posts is a good thing to do. But for macro things like writers and musicians and content creators, where anybody in the world can view your stuff, the real time
Mhm.
action is
Yeah,
on Twitter, and
yeah.
I wouldn't forgo that. And I'm going to talk to you about something called Twitter Spaces when we're done here. So I'm just sticking that in there.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I think I've heard of that, and that's probably a good idea for me if I learn about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we'll talk about that later. So it's Dorothy Rosby at Dorothy Rosby on Twitter.
Yeah. Mhm.
And what is it? Is it an author page that you have
Yes,
on
I have an
Facebook?
author page on Facebook, and I am on Instagram just as well, no, it's off my Facebook page. So yeah, yep. But I just barely started Instagram, so I'm really I'm not very knowledgeable about that. And then I am on LinkedIn, but Facebook. You know what? The difference for me between Facebook and Twitter is Facebook is my local audience.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
just
I
what I was getting
it's
at.
not
Sure.
just my local audience, but when I have an event locally, like a speaking thing or something locally, and the local bookstore is doing something or a book signing or something, Facebook is where those people are. Whereas
Yeah.
Twitter is more of a national thing for me.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, they
Absolutely.
both have their roles. I wish I
And
could keep up with them. That's my problem. I'm just like,
I take it you can get the book on Amazon. Is that the
yes,
best
it's
place to
on
get it?
Amazon. It is the best place right now. And my local bookstore. But here's the deal: it will be available in other bookstores eventually. But I'm having a little trouble. All my other books are available you can order them through any bookstore. But for some reason, I'm having a little trouble with the distribution with this book. So right now,
Really?
Amazon is the best place to get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they keep saying it will soon be there. And you know what else I did this time? I recorded an audiobook.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I did. Now, it is not up yet because it's being edited, but it's done. And it may not even, I don't know when I'll release it as soon as it's done, depending on when it's done. But I just love to read my work out loud. So I decided I'm going to do
Wow.
this, and a lot of people said, oh, don't, get a professional. It's like, well, I used to be, I mean, I did a lot of voiceovers for my old job, and I just love reading my work, and I know where the emphasis should be. I know where the
Yes.
pauses should be. And I just felt like I had to be the one to do it. And it really was fun, but it was a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Really was.
Obviously, you went to a studio and had somebody else produce it for you.
Yes, and
Yep.
I have a producer, and he is, they are editing it now. The cutting all the errors out and all that, because I did make some, if you can believe it. I did
Yeah,
make
sure.
some errors, but
It's impossible
but
to not.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I did do that. It was fun. It was really fun.
I've gotten offers to do that, and yeah, I some of them paid pretty well, but I got to tell you, you earn it because it was reading a book that I never had any knowledge of. You pretty much have to read the book once or twice before you even get
Yes.
into the studio.
Mhm.
And anyone out there, just imagine how long it takes you to read a book just to yourself. Well, imagine
Right.
reading it out loud absolutely perfectly. Well, that's of course impossible. You couldn't do that. You have to do it in sections. And then somebody has to go back over it and take out the mistakes, and where you have to redo a sentence and all these other things. It's a very, and I would have to do it myself. I could probably do it better if I had somebody run the controls for me, and all I had to do was stand there and read.
Yeah.
But I would have to do everything. And but you're talking about a couple of weeks worth of work, and it's very
Oh, yeah.
tedious. Yeah.
It really is. It was work. Yeah. It was fun work, but it was work. And I wouldn't have been able to do it by myself. And plus, I don't have the equipment, and I wanted
Yeah.
it to be, high quality editing and high quality sound and all of that. Plus, it has to be. I mean, Audible
Sure.
will check that. And they won't,
absolutely, yeah.
put it up if it isn't. So I did hire a studio and I don't know what you'd call him, a producer, an engineer, sound engineer, or whatever. And he also directed me a little bit when things would go off the rails or whatever. But I know what I wrote, so that helped me to
Yes.
do it, a little faster. But I practiced. I practiced every essay before I read it. I practiced them several times. So yeah, right now I'm kind of tired of the book. I know it by heart. No,
Yes.
no, just kidding. But yeah, it's work. It definitely is fun work, but work.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about that, and because you do that stuff so well. So it seems like a natural fit for you, Dorothy. I got to tell you, I've known you for a long time. You're a good soul, and that comes across in your writing. And I would tell people that I've known you for years, and that what's what I'm looking for here. You have this innocent type of humor that everyone can laugh at. And like I said, it's not mean spirited. It's not at anybody's expense. And that's something that we need a lot of. And it's hard to do that these days and be funny,
Yeah.
because quite frankly, audiences expect a little, going blue, as they call it. And to do that and do it in the way that you do it is very difficult. And you're very talented, and I hope this book does very well for you, for all the Scrooges out there like me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. It's a mean world. I mean, it's mean. That's my thing about
Yeah.
Twitter. It's mean, and I don't like to be mean, Billy.
Yes, yes. I'll say the name of the book one more time. Once again, the author's name and our guest today, Dorothy Rosby, and the title of the book is Let me try that again. 'Tis the Season to Feel Inadequate. The subtitle is Holidays, Special Occasions, and Other Times Our Celebrations Get Out of Hand. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Dorothy.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time. Good to talk to you again.
Absolutely great to talk to you. Once again, I'm Billy Dees, and you can find me on Twitter for the time being. It's still there. And I'm at Billy Dees on Twitter. You can find the podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and over at Good Pods. If you're not familiar with them, it's kind of like what Goodreads did for books, making independence discoverable. Good Pods is doing the same thing for podcasters. Thank you very much for checking out our podcast today, and we will talk to you again next week. I'm Billy Dees, and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft.
advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find the Billy D's podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter @BillyD's. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.